All right, welcome KW1 Chicago. Today we're going to be talking about multiple offers and just kind of best practices. I did put together some strategies and tools that I've used in my business and have learned from other great agents. But what I'd like for us to do today is make sure that everyone has an opportunity to share in their best practices. So as we kind of navigate through this, feel free to add on to it or include anything that you might find has been successful that you've used in the past or you've seen other agents use. That sound good?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right. So multiple offers, best practices. I thought it was important for us to first always talk about our mindset, right? And especially in our line of work and the fact that we're in negotiations on a daily or weekly basis, it's really important that we approach negotiations with the right mindset. And I thought this was a really cool quote that I found. Negotiation between salespeople and procurement is similar to gambling in many ways. Success in both customer negotiations and gambling requires good information, steely nerves, patience, and most of all, the ability to stay cool. When negotiators get emotional, they lose. When negotiators get emotional, they lose. Okay, much of the gamemanship by procurement is intended to get sellers to lose their cool. In both contexts, the negotiator who is more in control of his or her emotion wins. Would you guys not agree with that? Have you found where you might have been in negotiations with another agent and they necessarily weren't keeping their cool, or they may have started to let their emotions get the best of them? And, in that scenario, are they really truly representing their client in the best way, right? So I just think it's really important for us to always stay in neutral and understand that we are here for our client. And that is the only reason we're here. Our ego has to be put aside and keep our emotions in between the lines per se. So with negotiations or multiple offers, I thought it would be important to talk about the other party, right? So we have the co-op agent. So whether we're representing the buyer or seller, there's always another agent involved, or typically there's another agent involved. A tactic that, I find to have great success with, and I would obviously encourage, is to ensure that you're always presenting and negotiating verbally, then follow up the conversation with a text or email and keep a record. I'm sure some of you have experience, or maybe you've done it yourself, where maybe you've emailed an offer over and you didn't call the agent to let them know. You don't really know if the offer was ever really received and or was being presented to the seller or, on behalf of the buyer. So I always encourage to make sure that you're verbally presenting any and all offers. And so what I'll do is obviously present the offer, send over the email, and I will call that agent and I will do everything I can to have a verbal conversation. So some agents might respond via email or text and say, hey, Pam, I got your offer. Thank you so much. I will continue to press the issue to have a conversation, because when we can actually connect with one another, there's a whole different element and opportunity in getting to an agreement with the other side when you have that verbal connection. There's just so much more that comes to the table. You can feel the body language, the vocabulary, the responsiveness, right? So I would always encourage present and negotiate verbally as much as you can, and then just always follow up, with a text or email so you have a record of that conversation. Does anybody else feel differently on that? This is a completely open forum. No? Okay, cool. One thing that I have found, and Joel Holland and Pete Krasinski they're actually the ones that turned me on to this. We were negotiating a deal together, being co-op agents, if you will, representing the other side. And I was really impressed by an email that I had received from them when they were representing their offer. So they had put together kind of like this email template and how they're presenting all of their offers for their clients. And the email template, like content, was just absolutely superior. It didn't come across as them bragging on their level of business, but what it did show me as the other agent is their level of professionalism, and that they were really representing their client at the highest level, and they were prepared. And so as the co-op agent, that gave me confidence and peace of mind that should we, continue to move down our negotiations or in the transaction together, I knew I was dealing with true professionals. I knew that any roadblocks we may come across, we're going to handle with the highest level of care and responsiveness and availability, because they showed that in just the way they presented the offer. So I thought that was brilliant. So I would encourage you, just put your own little email template together. I could even ask them if we could share theirs, and they'll probably be open to it. But whatever is specific to you, customize it to yourself. It's more about showing your value as a professional. I just thought it was fantastic. Another thing that I do is I always look up the co-op agent's sales history. And the intention behind that are a few things. Number one, just to understand level of experience and knowledge, or potential knowledge, right? I'm also looking to see, do a lot of their transactions include concessions? Are there a lot of seller-buyer credits happening inside of the transactions? That could tell you a little bit more as to their understanding of the market and how they may be able to communicate to their client, especially if your client is looking to negotiate some sort of credit. So that at least gives you an indication that this agent is very familiar with that, more than likely knows how to handle that conversation, and may not be a potential roadblock as sometimes we might think it would be, especially in multiple offer situations. So I'm looking for kind of the history of their properties. So if you just kind of go through some of their listings and you just click on property sales history, you'll start to see a pattern. Do they list a lot of their properties high and they have to make a lot of price reductions? Is there longer market time on their properties, or do their properties sell pretty fast, etc.? Again, it's not a complete science, right? Like you can't say specifically, because each situation brings its own unique situation to it, but yet it gives you a really good insight as to the other agent and just how they practice their business. I also will always look up the property history, obviously, of that property. I'm sure most of you do that when you're ready to present an offer, or definitely in a multiple offer situation. Because if they just made a huge price reduction and now they're in a multiple offer situation, that's going to be a different level of motivation for the seller than if they just listed the property and they're in a multiple offer situation. So that's really important data to know and understand, to potentially have some idea of maybe the seller's motivation or willingness, to negotiate, or what might be important to them. Because if they've been sitting on the market for quite some time, then time might be more important to them than anything, especially if the property's vacant, right? Whereas if they're still living in it and they just listed it, maybe that is not as much a priority as price. So again, all of these tools can give us just a little bit more insight to be more prepared and understand what we might be working with. Tax record, mortgage, foreclosure lookup. A lot of people don't, or a lot of agents don't think to do the foreclosure lookup. It's something that I've done pretty much since about 2008, 2009, when we went into the short sale REO downturn of our market. That's when I started including this in kind of our process. So when we look up the tax record, obviously we're looking to see who owns the property. Have there been any transfers anytime recently from family member to family member? Do they have a mortgage on the property? When did they last, refinance the property? You could just start to determine, are they using their property as a cash out, right? Maybe they've had several refinances or equity line of credit in the last several years. That also can tell you a little bit maybe about their position. And then foreclosure lookup I do as well, because just because they're selling the property and the bank does not own it yet does not mean that they may not be in some sort of distress, and that there could potentially be a foreclosure process already started on the property. And that's extremely important and of value for you to know and your client to know. Does anybody have any questions on any of that so far? No? Okay.
I would also like to add, Pam, going back
Yeah.
to, because we know the market that we might be coming into the same way. Same ways about the flips as well, that they have to be holding, the deed has to be recorded and it has to be for X amount of months in order for a lender to fund it.
Thank you, Donna. Very, very important. I forgot to put flips in here. So for flips, they have to hold title for at least 90 days. And remember, it's actually when the title was recorded. So I just had a property I sold at 8811 Washington. You're more than welcome to look it up so you can kind of, connect the dots. 8811 Washington, Unit A in Niles. And this just happened to us where I was representing the buyer and I looked at the history of the property because I knew it was a flip. I could tell by walking into the property. And I looked at when the property closed. And what I failed to do was take it one step further and uncover when was the actual deed recorded. So although the current owner / seller owned the property for more than 90 days, my buyer was doing an FHA loan. That's where that comes into play, is FHA or VA. And sure enough, we're in the mortgage process. Our amazing loan officer catches it along the way, and we find out that the deed was not recorded in the time that it should have been, in conjunction with them of when they actually closed. And so that caused a lot of delays in us being able to close the property. And it really just turned into more of a mess than it needed to be. And I should have done that in the beginning. And it completely escaped my mind. So having a checklist obviously is always beneficial. So this way, if you don't run into these situations on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, at least when you have a checklist, you can always reference back to it and you don't skip these steps, right? So thank you, Donna, for saying that. Stack the terms and ask the co-op agent what is most important to their client. Money, time, stability in the actual offer, right? Meaning contingencies as is, and or an emotional connection. I think that's a very real thing, and it's important for us to know going into it. This is why I really want to make sure I'm connecting with the agent. I'm having that verbal conversation. It's going to be really hard for me to get this information from them through a text or email, but I can have a very natural, easy conversation ask the right questions to uncover what I can identify, what might be most important to their client. So through that conversation, we may discover that time is really the biggest determining factor for them. Great. So now we can go back to our client and say, hey, although you may have a lease, let's just say, for example, and your lease is not up for another 60 days, if we can offer them an earlier closing date, that might put us in a better position against some of these other offers. And oh, by the way, if you, my buyer, is going to be getting a mortgage to purchase this property, do you know and realize that you really kind of skip the first month of mortgage payments? It kind of gets put on the back end. So although you may want to time this perfectly where you're not up against having to make a mortgage payment and your monthly rental payment, we can coordinate it as such where that will not be the case, and we can still get you closed within a time frame that I think is going to be more attractive to the seller. And now we're positioning our clients' offer in a much better position, maybe against some of the others. So that's just, one simple example of how that could be beneficial. And unless we know this information, it will be difficult for us to even start to, navigate or give advice and structure the offer accordingly.
May I add one other thing, Pam? In a multiple offer situation, or when we take our buyers out, if you realize that your buyer is truly interested in that property from the moment you walk out the door, and you know that you're pretty much going to be going back and writing an offer, I immediately, or you do as well, Pam, reach out to the agent verbally to find out if they have any other offers on the table, what's the sense of urgency. So then this way, because some of our clients do get a little maybe complacent, like they think they may want to do it, or they're like, no, we want to do it. And then all of a sudden, if you're not having that communication, I know you said that from the get-go of like reaching out to the agent first. So at least on how to prepare the offer, prepare your client in order of the sense of urgency on how quickly we have to get this going, to avoid it maybe even being accepted and them losing out on the property.
Yes, thank you, Donna. Stack the terms. So in a multiple offer situation, a lot of agents may tend to think the less I put on the offer, the better it is, meaning keeping it as clean as possible, removing as many contingencies as you can, maybe not asking for any sort of concession, credit, etc. I'm of the thought that as long as you have that conversation with the agent and you can know a little bit better understanding of the seller's kind of tolerance level or what's important to them, as well as the agent's tolerance level, I think that there's still an opportunity to stack the terms per se, meaning that build in a home warranty, build in, if there's other contingencies, but always communicate to the agent, all of these items are negotiable. Because what could happen is now you could start taking those things off the table to ultimately win and get your client what's most important to them. You will have to feel that situation out in a multiple offer situation. So I'm not advocating that put in as many terms as possible, no. But what I'm suggesting is have a professional conversation with the co-op agent. You'll start to uncover kind of that tolerance level is what I call it. And then you'll be able to navigate through a little bit better how to structure that offer to really give your client the best opportunity to get them what's most important to them. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as I go forward, but that's what I meant by stacking the terms. Okay, so this is fun. Seller multiple offers. So this means that we're representing the seller. It's our listing. So I feel that all of this starts with the listing appointment and setting expectations right out the gate. And in our practice, we do a high level open house and lead generation around that open house or grand opening. Now that open house right now could be in person or virtual. So however you're running your business, it works perfectly either way, okay? So by us creating this urgency with this grand opening, this open house, whether in person or virtual, it allows us to actually go to work and help our seller position themselves when they receive multiple offers right out the gate. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So this is a snapshot of our open house tracking sheet, okay? So what this represents is obviously when the open house was, time, what agent was hosting, address, but this is what's most important. We're going to track how many people attended the open house. So we count people versus groups because that's important, okay? So then we have how many groups versus people, how many agents were with their client. And then this is our lead generation numbers. So when we went to promote this open house, we proactively prospected to other residents in the neighborhood to come and visit the open house. And part of our script in which we share with our seller right out the gate is we have 3 priorities with those calls. The first one is to find out if that resident in the area, since they already live there, they love it, they know it, do they know anybody that's looking to buy in their neighborhood? That's priority number 1. We're actually looking for a buyer for our property. We're going to work for our seller, right? Number 2, we're also identifying with that resident, that prospect, is do they have any interest in selling their property anytime soon, or do they know anyone? The reason we want to know that is that, again, that could be another buyer for this property. If they know of a neighbor that was looking to sell and maybe our property is the perfect downsize for them, well, then we should know that information and we want to connect with them as soon as possible and invite them to the open house and come check it out, right? Obviously, we're looking to build our pipeline for future listings and sellers too. But our priority is most certainly how can we connect with as many people as possible about this property and get them to come and check it out, right? So our third priority is, having they themselves just come and check out the property. Obviously, when we were in person, it could be extremely effective because you may have 10, 12, 18 neighbors show up because they're just interested to see what's going on. And then you have your true, ready, willing, and able buyers also showing up at the same time, because we basically launched all of our showings on the same day at the first time at that open house. So they're all coming together at once. It creates that sense of urgency. It creates that opportunity for our ready, willing, and able buyers to see that this property does have some value. And obviously there's a lot of people looking at it. Now, some of them might be nosy neighbors, but at the same time, it just allows them to see that they are in competition themselves. They're not the only ones. So when we do this lead generation and we share this with our seller ahead of time, we did 83 dials, we made 16 contacts, we left 49 voicemails, right? Whatever the numbers are, when we do this launch and we get these multiple offers, it's also a way to go back to your client and remind them. So not only did we have these offers that came in, but remember, we reached out to all these other people as well. Because the seller's tendency with a multiple offer, especially right out the gate, is holy smokes, we priced it too low, we didn't wait enough time, I shouldn't accept it yet. That's what goes on in their mind, right? And so by us going to work, truly giving them statistics and numbers and activities that have actually happened, they then start to see and understand the result of the multiple offer is because we priced it right, we proactively prospected to find you a buyer, and we did our job. So it really just creates that trust and understanding that this is a great opportunity and to truly consider these offers and don't go down the path of it's too soon, too fast, we should wait it out. I'm going to do a check-in right now. How many of you guys have experienced that, like in multiple offers where your seller's like, I'm not ready yet?
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you don't prep them ahead of time that you priced it to get these multiple offers, then you're fighting that battle of we priced it too low.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. So that's what I mean by lead generation numbers. So we'll share that with them. Showing stats, feedback, future showings. So whenever I receive a multiple offer situation or any offer, really, it doesn't have to be multiple offer, just an offer. A tactic I'll use is that I have found in the past, and some of you might agree, that when we receive an offer, and let's just say you have, 4 more showings scheduled for later on that day or the next day, right? Like within the next 24 hours. And then you contact those agents and say, hey, by the way, just want to let you know we received an offer. I see you have a showing coming up. Just wanted to make you aware that we already have an offer. My client is still okay with you showing it, but just wanted to give you a heads up. My experience with that communication is more often than not, the agent then contacts their client, the buyer, and then the buyer decides to cancel the appointment. And they don't even come and look at the property because some buyers just get a little shy, or they don't want to really get involved in any multiple offer situation. And since they haven't seen the property yet, why fall in love with it and have to kind of go through that disappointment or emotional process? So a lot of times buyers will just walk away and just cancel the appointment altogether. I don't want that to happen. And for 2 reasons. One is I'm here to represent the seller, and I got to do the best job for my client as a seller. And any appointment I could get for them, for somebody to come and see the property, that's going to be our goal. That's going to be our objective. So what I have found to be more successful is assuming that we're within a period of time that makes sense for the offers coming in and everything is communicated accordingly. I will let the showing happen, and then I'll call the agent as soon as they're done showing it. So if their appointment's at 4, I'm calling them at 4:15 or 4:30, and I'll say, hey, I saw that you just showed this. Wanted to let you know we have an offer or multiple offers on the table. Client is already called for highest and best, tomorrow by noon. So if your client does have any interest, please make sure to get your offer in. So I will just call the agent as soon as they show the property to let them know versus ahead of time, because I usually risk them not even seeing it at all. And here's the downside to that. If they don't even show it at all, and let's just say none of those offers worked out and you're still on the market, well, now your seller, who you have a fiduciary responsibility to, may have just missed out on 4 potential showings that we may not get back. We may not be able to encourage them to come back and make another appointment. So that's how I'll kind of handle like future showings. But again, this is all at the direction of the seller. I'm going to give them this advice. They're the ones who are, they're the ones who are in control. They're the ones who are making the decision on how we handle this situation. So I do want to be clear about that. Okay. Obviously, any feedback that we have, I will share that with the seller immediately, because we may have received some feedback that isn't favorable, even though we have a multiple offer situation. Again, these offers may not work out. So it's still good information for them to know and be aware of, and or to understand that out of the 20 showings that we had, we only had 2 that gave us an offer, and another 8 said that the property I don't know, was priced too high or it was a wrong layout or something, whatever it is. So again, that's still good information for them to know so they understand the so they understand the opportunity that sits there in front of them and not thinking that maybe they have something more than what they do. So it's just giving them that good feedback. Multiple offer log. This is another tool that we've created over the years that's been very helpful. And this is what it looks like. So this is a blank version, and I'll share this with you guys too. I'll send this to our leadership team and make sure that they distribute out to everybody. So what this is I use this in my listing presentations and or buyer consultations. So this is a tool that actually positions you of value and as a professional, and will give you great insight and tremendous like stats and statistics that then can help you in your future offer situations. So what we're going to do is obviously, you know, initials just means who on my team was inside of that transaction. That's all that means. And then client name, obviously, whoever you're representing, the property address, signature plus team SPT is just the name of our team. So is this a listing or buyer rep? So we have clarity on that, because I basically will sort this spreadsheet so then I can see how many listing offers we've had, how many buyer offers we have. Out of all of those offers, how many did we win? And at what percentage did we win them at? So this whole spreadsheet, you will be able to sort and know your numbers as far as your performance and results that you get for your clients. So it helps you get better and identify maybe some growth opportunity, but it also helps you communicate your results to your existing clients and or future clients. So then we'll put, you know, buyer agency agreement. Again, just another check-in point to make sure we have that buyer agency agreement. Who is the agent on the team? So if you're a solo agent, it'll just be you. This is important. I wanted to know what type of property is this? Is it a traditional? Is it an REO? Is it a short sale? I guess you can do new construction too. I don't really do a lot of new construction, so it never made it on here. But anything else you can think of that might be beneficial, you can add. For us, it was, or commercial, right? Commercial could be another one. We're gonna put the list price of the property. So even if we're representing the buyer, I still wanna know the actual list price of the property that we're putting an offer on. Then we're gonna put in what is our offer price. And then, obviously the date that it was submitted. Are we in a multiple offer situation? Yes or no? Did our offer get accepted? If so, what date? And or did it get rejected? If so, what date? Then the closed price. This is a monthly audit that we'll do with this spreadsheet. So then that way we'll just run through any properties that we don't have a closed price on yet, and we just run them through the MLS, or we put ourselves on an address watch through Connect MLS. So then that way when the property does close, you're getting an email notification automatically that'll tell you, hey, 123 Maple closed, and then you could see the closed sales price, and then you can just go back in here and input your data. The reason that this is so valuable is that I was able to start seeing and understanding on buyer rep. Let's just say, for example, if I'm representing a buyer and we're in a heavy REO market, foreclosure market, I'm able to start determining what is it going to take to win these properties and what is actually happening inside of maybe adjustments that we need to make in how we're presenting these offers and what we're building into them. So this just gave us that additional insight and percentage. So you can most certainly put together your own lore, your language of real estate that allows you to say, hey, my name is Manny and I, my average list to sales price is X. Or when I'm representing a buyer, my buyers are winning offers. I'm saving them 9% over the average buyer. This is how you can start to accumulate this data and be able to see it and understand it at a snapshot. And then when you're on a listing appointment or a buyer consultation, I will show them like the previous year's whole spreadsheet filled out. It just gives you validity yet again that you're a true professional and that you are studying the market and the numbers. And it also allows you to communicate to them, again, your performance and that you are looking at these things in detail. So this is just another cool tool that we've created over time. Command, you guys, will do a lot of this for us. So please forgive me right now that I have a lot of what I'll call old school spreadsheets that before Command was around, we had to create because I knew that it was important data for us to have. So as we continue to evolve inside of Command, a lot of this is going to start to be available to you right through Command, and you'll be able to, have this information at your fingertips, even more at ease than having to do all of this. So the concept is still the concept, right? And so just take that for what it's worth. Does anybody have any questions on this specifically or anything else?
I've got some questions and comments as well.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up that, Excel is great, and whatever tools and systems you're using is the best tool and system that you're using. And you can do this now in Command. So you can set up multiple offers. So I see that this spreadsheet is just an offer spreadsheet, not necessarily for a multiple offer. However, you could use it for a multiple offer. It's just all offers that you and your team are creating.
For me? Yeah. Yes and no, Joe. So let me go back to that real quick for you. Hang on. I gotta move that down. Okay. So yeah, so this is for all offers. And then just in this one section here, it allows me to see if we were in a multiple offer situation or not. That was this one here. And then I have another spreadsheet I'm going to show you that I use to present to the client for multiple offers.
Perfect.
Yeah, I figured that's where you were going. Yes.
That's where I was going with that.
Here, I'll just pull it up now.
I'd also like to add, because I know most of us here at Keller Williams are using buyer's agency agreements right out the gate. And a lot of the times we know that when we're dealing with, going up against other buyers and their agents in these offers, I always explain to the listing agent right out the gate is that, listen, I have a buyer's agency agreement and we've done buyer consultations, and letting them know the solidness of our client and our professionalism coming on in. Because 9 times out of 10, most buyer's agents will sign the buyer's agency agreement once they've actually agreed upon an offer, which in a lot of different ways we have found and we tracked, they end up coming back to us because of the fact of, we present up front of that we have a buyer's agency and we've explained the whole entire process. And also with showing these numbers, we don't have to show the numbers to the agent, but when you can track your numbers and let them know, hey, listen, I have closed, 20 buyers this past, 12 months. I'm not sure with what you're dealing with in regards to these other offers, but please understand when we're putting in offers, it's because we're serious, because we do find a lot of these agents out there, they're working with unrepresented buyers for them. And it can really get skewed, and it helped our clients win a lot of the offers out there because of us tracking the numbers along the way and being able to present of, these different types of items as well.
Yes, thank you. So this is what Joe is talking about. So this is a sample of a offer log communication that I'll have with the seller. So this is obviously a listing that we had. These are all the offers that came in. Obviously list price, offer price, the date it was submitted, multiple offer, yes, we know. And then we would have here, oh, actually, this is not the right one. I'm sorry, because we would have the terms on there as well. Let me just pull that up real quick. Let's see. Let me see if it's this one. Well, here's one sample. So I know we have it in Excel format, but you just kind of get the point of how it's helpful. So we would put in obviously the terms and just kind of do them side by side and help our client know, obviously, if there's any closing cost credit, what is the actual net price? So that's something we always want to focus on because it can get really hard for them to see what are they actually getting for the property with all those credits in there. So, obviously price, offer, closing cost credit, earnest money, is it a loan or cash, closing, tax proration, as is, pre-approval, meaning do we have the pre-approval with the offer? We're not going to accept one without it, but we're just identifying, do we have it at this point yet or not? Inspection report. This was a property that we had previously sold and we had an inspection report on, and the seller was okay with us sharing with any offers that came in then thereafter, because we had determined that we'd rather get offers that are realistic, knowing what's already on this inspection report. And we could have the possibility that the new buyer might waive their home inspection altogether because they have this already existing inspection report. So that's why on this one, inspection report was on there. So yes, thank you, Joe. It's a really good tool to have and just be able to have clarity for your client on what's happening with these properties.
Pam, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So on that sheet, do you also have a column, well, a row that states spoke to loan officer? And the reason I ask that, because what I'm doing is I'm contacting loan officer and I'm treating it like commercial, like I'm asking all the questions. And if you can tell me, if you can't tell me, well, you can't tell me. But if you feel it's best, and one of the things right now is, hey, what do your clients do for a living? Oh, they're both outstanding managers at restaurants. Well, hold on, right? So that goes a long way too, right? If you tell me you're in the hotel industry, restaurant, right? So
Yes.
if you're a good driver, awesome, right? So do you recommend also putting a column there like spoke to loan officer, yes or no?
I do, and I was just trying to find it. This one's
sorry.
this deal's all is a lot of fun, as you can see. But
And
we went
to
through.
add, Manny, to a great listing agent will always reach out to the loan officer even before the contract signed for your client.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I always, no matter what, multiple offer situation or not, I always talk to the loan officer before we ever sign off on any contract, no matter what. And again, it's a verbal conversation. I'm really big about that verbal conversation because I want to ask questions, and you learn a lot through their communication and how they're answering things and how quickly they're answering them. So I'm always about that verbal communication. Thank you.
Well, and in addition to these days, we know that there's multiple different lenders out there, right? And we know that some of them are a little bit more fly by night, and they're giving what's not necessarily a pre-approval. They might be more closer to a pre-qual, and they haven't even accepted some of their interior docs, and if they've been put through the underwriting system first to actually receive it. So that is also another way to weed out, making sure that this buyer, especially if you're representing the seller, how far along are they with this loan process? And if they're really truly a valid buyer, because we know that a lot of these mortgage companies actually give these kind of what we call fake approvals. And in the end, here you are a week away from closing, and all of a sudden the file was denied because the loan officer really did not have all the facts and everything up front.
Thank you. I'm going to try to get through this because I know I got 13 minutes. All right. So I will also always do an updated CMA and net sheet. The seller, although you may have done a net sheet for them when you took the listing, they get a little, just information is coming all at them at once. So I want to make sure they're focusing on the right information. So I will do an updated net sheet and show them, even if it's doing a full net sheet and or just putting the dollars next to a column inside the offer log, that's fine too, but just let them know what they're actually looking at in their bottom line. Communication, client presentation, timing, willpower's not on will call. I always do my best to set the client up for success. And if there's one thing I learned from the one thing, it is the willpower's not on will call. That has helped me so much run my own business and life in a so much more productive way. And I really do my best to set others up for success with that. So I'm not looking to negotiate and present to the seller at 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night. They are wiped out from the day. This is a complete, most of the time, sometimes it isn't, but most of the time it's an emotional process. They have a lot of attachment, and now their energy dial is completely down because they've had all of the day, that whatever the day had brought them has just kind of, I don't want to say beat them up, but push their energy down and down and down and down. So they may not be as clear-minded as they would in the morning. So what I'll do is I ask permission. I'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have offers coming in. Here's how we can handle these multiple offer situations. And I'll walk them through the different choices that they have. More often than not, they'll say, yes, Pam, let's go ahead and ask for everybody to come in with their highest and best by a certain time, right? They don't have to make that decision. They may just say, accept this one, and that's the end of it. So I let them decide, it's their choice. But let's just assume that the seller said, yeah, you know what, let's just go ahead and get all the offers in, ask everybody to give us their highest and best by such and such time. That's when I'll set that time for probably the next day. And I'll do it during a time that now I know when I can connect with the seller to present. It's not 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, because I won't get the best from them. And I want to set them up for success because this is a big decision. So I'm very conscious of timing and presenting and my client's energy dial. And maybe for some clients, 9 o'clock is the right decision because they work nights. You know what I mean? You'll have to gauge that. I always make sure before I present, I'm going to go back to my listing questionnaire and just again, take inventory as to my client's motivation and just, reanalyzing what really was important to them. What did they tell me? And so it's just taking that time to really be there for them and supporting them. So if they start maybe getting a little emotional, you can bring them back to their goal. You can bring them back to their motivation. That's what they're relying on you to do. And then from there, we can talk about what's most important to them and then start to identify what terms of the contract maybe aren't so important to us, that if we give that to the buyer, but we say we want this, we have a better opportunity of giving it because we gave them something, right? A little bit of a give and take. And so we'll identify that strategy so the seller knows what I'm up to in those negotiations, and they're in alignment with that and giving me direction to do it. Buyer rep multiple, Vegas scenario. This is good. I learned this a long time ago from an old school agent. His name is Russ Cangelosi, love him to death. And he taught me early on, and he goes, Pam, when you're negotiating and maybe your seller is just all caught up in the moment and they really have this price in mind and they're just not coming off of it, but you know what's best for them because you understand the market, you're interpreting the market, you understand the dynamics of the situation as a professional, you're not tied into it emotionally like they are. He called it the Vegas scenario. And he goes, what you need to remind them of is that, hey, if I have $350,000 here for you right now today, like let's just say that's the, offer price, right? Are you willing to forego $350,000 for $3,000? And sometimes your client just needs to hear that from you. Like, you know what, you're right. Like, I am literally giving up $350,000 for $3,000 right now when all these other things can now happen. So sometimes it just helps them put it in perspective that maybe $353,000 for the property versus $350, it's worth it. So I always love that. And I do use it, and clients do appreciate it. Buyer rep multiple offer. I always make sure to do a CMA no matter what. I think a lot of agents may tend to skip over this step, especially if it's a multiple offer situation, because the assumption could be, well, of course it's worth what they're asking. Why else would they be in a multiple offer situation? And so in my practice and anybody I work with, I still always require and ask and make sure that we do a CMA no matter what. And it's because it's all those other steps that we go through. It's looking at the property history. It's looking at the tax record. It's looking at the data. What is the average list price to sales price? What is it that I'm seeing about this property or other information that had I not gone and did the CMA, I probably would have just skipped over and not uncovered important information, like when was the deed recorded? You know what I mean? So these are all things that you'll naturally go through your own steps and see. But if you skip that step, you might miss something extremely important and really not representing your buyer in the best way possible. So I always encourage definitely do a CMA. Again, I'll look up the listing agent's sales history. We talked about that already. So I'll do the same thing when I'm representing a buyer. The letter from the heart, I'm sure most of you are familiar with. They are very effective. And especially if you have a seller that has that emotional attachment to their property, which most of them do, they'll give up a couple of $1,000s on price if they feel a little bit connected to that buyer. So I think the letter from the heart can be a very effective tool and one, to consider and use.
All right,
Pam, can I ask a question about the letter from the heart?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get those quite often when we get multiple offers, and on occasion I've had my own clients write them, but I keep hearing about the risk of fair housing coming up with that.
That's a good question. I haven't really addressed that in detail, to be honest with you, to kind of start maybe seeing what exposure we may be opening ourselves up to. So that actually should be a conversation we should have as professionals on what does that look like. I always review whatever my clients, so I always ask them to write it, send it to me, I'll review it. And so, I'm always going to have a set of eyes on it to make sure that something in there innocently, right? It's not on purpose, but innocently they say something that could violate fair housing or something, then, we as a professional can point that out to them and maybe have them make that adjustment. But you're right. I haven't even really thought about that, especially with all of the change that's going on right now. I think that's something we do need to take into consideration.
Hey, Pam, can
Yeah,
I?
I would. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. I wanted to.
I was just. I was just gonna say, like, I think that it sounds like when I'm reading a lot of stuff on Facebook about it, it's more the idea that the seller chose offer B instead of offer E because offer B has kids and offer E doesn't, or race or something. And like, I mean, I did have a seller at one point who was, I will fully say it was completely racist, and I had to dance around it horribly. And that I would love for us to have a conversation figuring out how to handle this letter from the heart and what is the right thing and what's the wrong thing.
I like that. And so what I'll do is, well, let's take this definitely and have a bigger, larger conversation as
Yeah.
a market center for sure, because it is something that we should address.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
What I wanted to share is that I've had this conversation with other brokers, and what makes it worse is a lot of people think like, hey, I'm going to put a picture of my family at the bottom section of that page. I'm only going to write about 1/4, and then the bottom section I'm going to put a picture, and it's my beautiful family. And now you see the color, culture, whatever of that family, and that's where it really gets really in trouble. So the conversations I've had with other brokers has been that. The fact that you put a picture, and it's great. I mean, it's beautiful. You want to see my loving, beautiful family. But now all of a sudden it's, well, could it have been because you know how they look or yada, yada, yada. So for me, what I've heard has been that picture.
Okay. No, this is great. I see. That's why this is a great open forum, right? We all learn from each other. Yeah, let's definitely take this conversation to our market center and talk more about this, because it's important. And none of us want to find ourselves in any situations, because we know we're professionals and we don't view things that way, but we most certainly can't control what other people do. You're right.
Sarge, do you have anything to add to that? Because I mean, with the managing broker piece, what are your thoughts and ideas?
That's why we created the fair housing disclosure pamphlet that I get a lot of pushback from agents. If you give that to your client and they sign off on it, almost all liability is off of you, because now you've given them everything about fair housing. They've acknowledged it. They understand. Obviously, if there's something that comes up that is blatant, you should contact the managing broker immediately. But if you see something in a letter, you don't know how to handle it, contact the managing broker. But make sure that form's signed right away, because now it's all on them.
Emma, I've got two quick questions to bring, or comments to bring up
Yeah.
about multiple offers. One is, there are cases where a multiple offer might create an appraisal issue.
Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things that I've done with multiple offers for my sellers is to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if we take your offer, are you willing to bridge the gap between the appraised amount and your offer amount? So you want to clear that up before it becomes an issue. And that's why I'm glad you do your CMA, because you could be on the cusp of being outside of what an appraiser might appraise it for, and say, buyer, will take your offer, but if it's a $5,000 difference, you've got to bring that money to the table. Are you okay with that?
Thank you, Joe. Yes, the appraisal issues, 100%. And another thing to be aware of is for FHA, if you go with a buyer that's FHA and they do an appraisal on the property, and that buyer decides to cancel for whatever reason, they don't get the mortgage, they get cold feet, doesn't matter. Let's just, that buyer cancels, that appraisal stays with that property for 60 days. So if you're now find yourself back on the market and you have another FHA buyer interested in that property and you had appraisal issues per se, those appraisal issues did not go away. So you want to always make sure to communicate to your seller ahead of time. If we go down this road with an FHA buyer, which is fine and great, just know if for some reason they cancel and we find ourselves in another contract with another FHA buyer, that appraisal is going to stick with the property. And so you just need to be aware of that ahead of time. And as a professional, know and be able to prepare ahead of time. Do you see any potential of appraisal issues? And communicate accordingly. Thank you, Joe. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
I know you said 60 days, but wasn't it, I mean, it might have changed. Wasn't it
It
6
changed.
months? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, change. It just changed. Okay. oh, mortgage calculator. One more thing. I think this is so key, and some of us might forget to do this. I thought it was worth bringing up. Similar to the seller with the Vegas scenario, are you really ready to forego $350,000 for 3,000? Again, on the flip side with the buyer, when you actually calculate out the small difference of price that they may be trying to negotiate that, you know, maybe the seller's willing to go to, you're talking about maybe 25 bucks, 30 bucks a month. Sometimes it's so minimal. And when you can help your buyers see and understand what it actually will cost them on a monthly basis inside of their mortgage payment, it's not such a big deal. And if it's the right property for them, then we just want to give them all the necessary information so they can make the right decision, right? They're gonna decide if it's the right property, and they're gonna move forward with it one way or another. But when we can give them the right data to allow themselves to make that informed decision, that's our job. So I'll most certainly bring out that mortgage calculator and send them what the payments will look like at this price, at this price, at this price, just so they have perspective. And sometimes it puts them at ease and they don't get so hung up on a couple of $1,000s. All right, I know it's 2:03, I'm almost done. My last and final statement, communication is absolute key to any negotiation, and more so in a multiple offer. Stand out, connect and care with all parties. We are there for our clients. Remove your ego. This is not about you. I think that's the best advice I can give myself and all of you. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I appreciate you, and we'll take that conversation on the letter of heart a little bit further and help each other out with how to navigate through that better.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Okay, bye.